Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of our Cannes Lion 2025 What They Said Influencer Marketing podcast episodes. I'm joined by yet another incredible guest today. But before I get into that, please, wherever you're listening to this podcast, can you leave a lovely review specifically about my presenting style and how much you love the podcast, because it means the marketing team love me even more. But without further ado, I would love to introduce the absolutely brilliant Laura Donadio from The Wild. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and what a lovely intro. I do hope people leave a lot of comments that are very positive because I'm sure that your style is absolutely fantastic.
Can we cheers to that? We've both got a glass of ice cold rosé here. How many times have you been to Cannes?
I've actually been at the film festival in Cannes 4 years in a row, but I've never done Lions. So yeah, that's the first. But I still have loads of food recommendations and loads of places I usually hang out.
I did know this because we spoke ahead of the call, so that doesn't surprise me. But we're both Cannes first timers. I don't know about you. My impression of Cannes without being here was actually it seemed quite a lot. It seemed like there was a lot going on.
Overstimulation first, honestly. I got here, I did not expect this madness. In fact, we actually sat for lunch with my friend and some of her friends. A lady next to us just came back from a wedding in Germany. American, had no idea that this was happening this week, and just got to Cannes and was like, what is this? What did I just walk into? And I feel her because I felt the exact same coming in. It's just so busy. It's insane.
The heat makes everything okay, although the first thing you said to me was when we hugged was, which is actually the same as what the last guest said, is we're both sticky. But there's aircon in here. You were sitting on the balcony for a little bit whilst we wrapped up the other episodes, so it's safe to say you've been in the sunshine.
Yes. Look, we come from London. We complain about the weather all the time, right? It's always rainy. It's always cold. It's always gray. Here we have 30 degrees. It's sunny. Like, I think for now, for one, we have to actually enjoy it and be grateful about it. So I'm going to try to stay positive whilst I'm melting. I am loving it.
I would love to talk a little bit about your role, actually, and what you get up to on a daily basis. So, talk us through. Obviously, the Wild has gone through quite a change, quite a big shift, quite a lot of growth over recent years and months. But you've worked there for a while, so tell us, how has influencer changed specifically at the Wild, and what's the future look like?
Yeah, so I think ultimately we are a very influencer first business. I think you see a lot more of these nowadays, but I think Wild was probably one of the first ones that was very sort of like influencer first in their space, which is phenomenal and definitely something I massively stand for, having been in the industry for so long. But ultimately, they built their success off the back of a successful influencer collaboration and decided to scale that way. So the influencer team has always been a very big focus within the business. It's always been something that was a key lever for growth and even something that they would be testing with to launch in new markets. So they would always send influencer first, and then influencer did well, then they would sort of like expand into the wider marketing, into retail, and sort of like build our strategy off of that. Now, we have a very unusual setup with influencers. So the business is about 100 people, and my team is 30. So yeah, so my team actually holds a third of the company from just influencer marketing and sort of like wider partnerships. So I do own a couple of channels, so influencers, social commerce, affiliate marketing, and then sort of like offline and B2B partnerships, but it's very sort of influencer centric still. We have a team of, yeah, as I said, 30 that are very sort of into the depth of influencer marketing and work with about 5,000 creators on a quarterly basis, which is insane.
5,000 on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's about, I think, about 20,000 at year end, which is absolutely outrageous. I praise them every day because I just don't know how to deal with so many creators on a day in day out basis. But yeah, they do a phenomenal job at just churning content, getting all those partnerships out from, different sort of like models with like commission basis, gifting with paid influencers, and everything is actually done in house. So, we don't use any agencies, and we're very sort of like team first. And yeah, they're doing an insane job.
What is really interesting is that you've said using influencers as a test and learn before you expand in market. That's huge because I think there's been so many conversations I've been part of over the years, or anyone in marketing's been part of over the years, where actually we're just fighting for influencer to get considered as a channel. But you're saying, and you've proven to the business, that influencer is cost effective. It shows you how you're cutting through with culture. You land product with the right people, and then actually it's showing you that you can then go all in on that market.
Absolutely. That's what sold me on the role at first, is that I've never seen a business where it's influencer first. And you're so right. Like, having been in the industry for so long, we had such a bad reputation for, I mean, up until now, and probably still to some degree, depending on the brand that you talk to, is still a very difficult thing to get over the line sometimes. I know that some brands are struggling to get, a 20K investment when they spend million on the rest of marketing, right? Whereas, yeah, as you said, like Wild has just been doing the complete opposite. It's like, let's try influencer because they see it as a fairly affordable acquisition channel to see whether the product sticks,
Mm.
and then sort of like go from there. So we always start with like smaller budgets, start with a lot of gifting, a lot of affiliate model, and then start with like some smaller paid collaboration. And then if we see good traction, we sort of like continue scaling. Once the market is doing a good, have a little bit of traction, is doing some good revenue, we then scale further. I guess it's a little bit different with the way that we do things, that it's very sort of like conversion led. So it's not a brand awareness play where it's just, oh, let's get the product out there, let's, educate the customer. Yes, we do that as well, but it's not the only goal of the channel. We actually do very conversion led influencer marketing that very much has, a specific customer acquisition cost target, a specific revenue target. And, we always want to make sure that we're within those threshold, and it's very sort of like managed from a target perspective.
There's been a number of brands I've spoken to over the years where they also operate on that model, not quite to the same scale that you are that you're executing, but that having that sort of CPA benchmark in terms of like, this is what success looks like for us. And I suppose you can still have some creative freedom and fun with that as well. In terms of those longer term partnerships, how does that come into play? Because I think a lot of brands come unstuck where they're just looking at CPA benchmarks, but actually, do you take that data first mindset of actually those longer term advocates are converting better for us, or is that not something that happened? Talk to us about those longer term pieces.
I'm a huge advocate of the longer the better. And, you will hit a point of customer fatigue 100%, but I don't think you hit that within, your sort of like 3 to 6 month threshold. I think it's also being strategic with it. Look at your product shelf life, for example. A Wild refill is 3 months. So you would obviously think that, how long is a customer going to take to go through that refill before they need a new one? And just try to be strategic with when people have first bought versus when you're reactivating the influencer. And activating them, for example, every month might not be strategic. So I do think that when we look at our longer term collaboration, we space it out maybe a bit more than some other brands. However, yeah, as I said, I'm a huge advocate of, building longer term partnerships. And I'm also a big supporter of your sort of like hidden content strategy. So like, you would push an influencer to just feature your product organically in the back, and not really say too much about it, and then sort of like build a storytelling around how that product comes into play in the content, and then how you
That
then.
authentic connection.
Exactly. So it's more like a story piece of how that creator is using the product versus just like, here's my code, go shop the product if they've never heard of it. So I do think that, that for me plays a huge part in our content strategy, but it is still very conversion led.
I think a big part of the wild success as well is obviously how you resonate with Gen Z, who are looking for more sustainable, eco-friendly options, and they're far more eco-conscious. Certainly from the work we do as a B Corp as well, where we know that actually people want to do stuff that is good for the people on the planet that we live on. So you're not just selling a deodorant. You're selling a mission, you're selling a mindset and a lifestyle. Do you find it's hard to get that to resonate through influencer content without sounding preachy? And then also, we're in a world where, sadly, a lot of brands greenwash. So, two bits there. Is it hard to not sound preachy? And how do you navigate any claims of sort of greenwashing and things like that?
Absolutely. Well, I think we've been really transparent over the years of how we take our mission to life, and, what amount of plastic we've saved, and, every product that we do is very much trying to go into that space. I think fortunately it has to be an education piece before everything else, because, most people will just not know. And so we always try to have really educational content on like, this might look like plastic, but actually it's not plastic, or this will actually decompose within the right environment within 6 months, and this is how we do our part in, helping the world be a better place. Now, it's been really interesting recently, obviously, with the Unilever acquisition, because it's been interesting comments and feedback on that. And, we had a lot of influencers actually request to stop working with us because they felt like the mission wasn't aligned anymore. And I think, this is a part that we're very keen to reassure everyone that ultimately our processes haven't changed. And also, you know how this works. It's not overnight that you're going to shift your entire supply chain and production to something that doesn't feel sustainable anymore. And ultimately, from our side, we're still on the same mission. We're still trying to make your bathroom more sustainable, more refillable, and fight the single plastic use out into the world. So from our side, we're still on the same mission, and we're still fighting sort of like really hard for it. Ultimately, what we want our creators to do is just educate their audience, but in a way that feels authentic for them. So we would never push anything too scripty to them. And it's more like, right, so you've got 10 talking points. As long as you hit four of them through your content, we're happy with that. And you pick the four that you feel resonate with you and your audience the most. And some of them will lean a bit more into that sustainability piece. Some of them will lean a bit more into that lifestyle piece. And we're sort of happy with that because we work with so many of them that it sort of balances itself out, if that makes sense.
Backdrop to this conversation is I have my ocean bottle, reusable water bottle here that is also B Corp. But I think it's really interesting because I think increasingly what we're seeing in the podcast is brands have a lot of safety milestones when it comes to working with influencers, and you are vetting the life out of these influencers to make sure they align with your values, and rightfully so. What's interesting to the point you just said is that influencers are taking it upon themselves to also say, actually, Laura, we've enjoyed working with you because of your values, or at least positioning now because of the Unilever acquisition, which is amazing. They're saying, actually, I can't proceed with a longer term partnership. Even though that is obviously a shame for both parties, it's really valuable because actually it's showing brands that these influencers can make a choice. They're not desperate for your brand deal. I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I feel like that's a good thing for the wild because actually you want those really credible advocates. Otherwise, they can see through it.
Absolutely. And look, anyone that has expressed their view on this, I've straight away told my team, look, get out of the contract. We don't need to ask for anything else. Like, if you don't want to work with us anymore, we're absolutely not going to try to convince you. I want to really respect people's opinion. And if that's how they feel, I want to be that person that says, you're allowed your own opinion and we're not going to judge you for it. However, I still want to do that piece of work where I reassure everyone that, we're still the same sustainable company and we're still fighting for the same mission, because I think that's quite important. But ultimately, when we pick influencers, we are very specific with who we work with. But I'm also very happy to see that, back to what you just said, right? It's very refreshing to see influencers take a stance and creators take a stance on the brands that they work with. I think this is something that I've been personally saying for years, is that I would never pay for an exclusivity clause, because I genuinely believe that if you're working with the right talent, they wouldn't actually work with another brand in the same space within 4 weeks, 8 weeks, because I actually do think that it goes against their personal credibility and, who they show up as a person. And ultimately, their brand is the most important thing for them, right? That's what they show up in the world. That's what gets them their deals. That's what gets them their business. So, from my perspective, I would never pay for exclusivity, because I would hope the talent would actually exercise the best caution in that space to protect their own sort of positioning. But equally, you'll always get burned every so often about it. But I think, yeah, so I'm very happy to see creators take a stance on it. Obviously, I'd happily sort of spend time with anyone that would want further education on the things that we're still doing, on our mission, on, how we're fighting single-use plastic from bathrooms. But equally, if someone wants out, we'll hold my hands up and be like, yeah, absolutely fine. Off you go.
That's not done enough. I think there's that's amazing to hear because I think reputationally, it makes sense for you to say, actually, okay, we'll walk away from this partnership amicably. There's no bad blood. But there's been so many instances where influencers are, and I've got friends that are creators, with their agents, they've been locked into contracts for brands that actually maybe it's not the right fit. So it is tricky. Have there been any sort of surprising creator wins that you didn't anticipate that really surprised you? You're actually new vertical, new niche, totally new creator that actually converted really well for you as a client, as a brand, and you're thinking, okay, we need to do more of this weird stuff.
Oh my God, yes. We've always got the roguest niche working for us. And it's always like, so I have a stand up with my team in each market on Monday mornings, where I'm trying to get more involved, just because I'm curious on like what's working, what's not working, how they're pacing towards like their quarter targets and all of that. And there's just like really funny niches that work for us, like horse girls.
Horse girls.
Yeah.
What's a horse girl, Laura?
A girl that's into like horse riding and horses.
It makes sense. I had like a furry in my mind, and I was like, this is strange.
I saw your face and I was like, oh no, what have I said? What did I say? A glass of rosé and then that's it. Everything is gone. No, yeah. So girls are into horse riding, nothing else. Sorry. That said, yeah, we've always got really rogue niches that really work for us. But then every so often, my team will just have one creator that just like knocks it out of the park, and it's like all of a sudden this like insane revenue coming from this one piece of content, and we're all mind blown. And yeah, it's just pretty. It still baffles me because I've seen it across, the years. Like as I said, I've been in the industry for so long, and I've seen it, and I've seen the Molly Mays, and I've seen the Lona Luxes, and they're amazing at what they do. They really convert. They're really great for what they do. But every so often, you see this like rogue little influencer that you've never heard before that you just wouldn't expect. And ultimately, like as I said, my team works globally, so there's some markets where I just wouldn't know, right? Then they'll come up to me and they're like, oh, this person has driven this much money, and then my face just drops and I'm like, really? That's amazing. I'm like, well done.
Do you feel, I'm not putting words in your mouth here, this is just me projecting, it feels kind of like an art, not a science, even though every time I do it, every time a campaign goes out the door, I'm like, it might work. And it comes back and it astonishes me, the results. I don't know, because having done this, I think you've done it slightly longer than me. It just blows my mind every time. And actually, when people say, oh, the age of influence is over, the data's not showing that. And I think the previous episode we had with Lucy Edwards, who's a blind creator, she's launching her own brand, and then TikTok Shop. The numbers coming out of this continue to grow, and it shows why Unilever's invested in the world, and the investment's going up in influencer marketing. Have we hit the glass ceiling yet? I don't think so, and Cannes seems to be also following suit.
Look, I have the funniest anecdote. When I did my master's degree, I did it in public relations, and I did my thesis on influence marketing. Funnily enough, obviously, like we're talking like 12 years back, right?
You might be the only person I've met that's got an applicable university degree.
Hold on, this is where it gets fun. So I did my thesis on influencer marketing, and that was like the old days of like Chiara Ferragni and like the early days bloggers that were sort of like starting to make a dent. And my thesis topic was, can you make influencer marketing a business? Now I'll let you guess what my answer was.
Did you say no?
I said no, and then I proceeded in proving myself wrong by making a whole career out of it. So look, I've been saying this for years. I think influencer marketing is just not going anywhere, and I think if anything, it's just continuously evolving. And I think influencers is not just showing up as a channel anymore. I think it's a way of doing content, and I think it feeds into a lot of different things. Whether that's your conversion strategies, whether that's your new customer acquisition, whether that's your content play, whether that's just your way of raising brand awareness. I think there's just so many ways of doing influencer marketing that calling it influencer marketing, even creator economy, I find very limiting because it doesn't give justice to the way that you can activate the channel and driving value in just so many ways. But yeah, so I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think back to your point, and like it's still astonishing that we see some results sometimes and we're like, how? And I hear you, but equally, I think like what I've seen with my team, because I work with quite a lot of AI tools actually in this space that keep on always asking me, how do we build that eye for talent? And I just said, like, I think you just have to do a lot of test and learn, trial and error, and you almost like it's very subtle. I think you and I could probably look at a list of influencers and be like, yes, no, like almost like, Tinder vibes, like swipe left, right, and pick them. And I think we would land probably like bang on.
It's a gut feel.
It's a gut feel, absolutely. But I think it's a gut feel that you develop over the years by just having done it, knowing which talents work and which don't. But I just don't think there's like, yes, obviously, like, I'm data first. I will look at every single data touch point. I will look at past collaboration. I would look at lookalike profiles. Yes, all of that. But then it's a gut feel. It's like you just have to develop the eye. And we've sort of like built a team at Wild that is incredible at building their own eye for it, and becoming that person that can actually identify your talent straight away. Is like, yes, no, will that talent work? Yeah. Will that talent convert? Yeah. And they get it like 8 times out of 10, and it's pretty impressive. But yeah, I think it is a gut feel.
I think it's definitely like a sixth sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I say when it feels like an art, not a science, even though it's so data driven. But it's kind of bottling up that connection is really hard. Look, Laura, this has been Absolutely fantastic having you on the episode. I've really enjoyed it. The rosé helped. It's definitely what we needed on a hot day like this. Your hot take on Cannes so far, day one, you've never been. Is it living up to expectations? Have you only hit the tip of the iceberg?
I mean, as I was saying to you before we started recording, is that the minute I stepped off the airport, I ended up in a taxi with a really big creator that has 6 million followers. So at this point, day one, about like 6 hours in, I would say it absolutely is, and I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what the rest of the week is. But equally, I already feel very overstimulated. So I think I'm going to be very happy to go back to London after the next couple of days and have like a bit of peace and quiet in my flat, like dark lights, nothing, no sound, nothing. Just sat in my bed and just looking at the ceiling.
That's London for you, where no one talks to each other. So actually, it's complete opposite to Cannes. No, Laura, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It has been fantastic having you. I'm sure we'll meet up over the week as well. And this was episode 2 of our Cannes special episodes. If people want to find you, Laura, are you on LinkedIn?
I am, absolutely. Laura Donadio on LinkedIn.
Can we expect insight, intrigue, creative inspiration, or rarely posting?
Okay, I'm rarely posting. I'm a terrible influencer. If I think if influencer marketer knew how to be an influencer themselves, they would have 100% done it by now, because we know that's where the money is. Like, we don't actually need any convincing. We know this. We pay the bills. Unfortunately, not my scene. I'm really trying. I'm really, really trying. And I sent a really lovely post live on Saturday being like, hey, I'm not going to make this like braggy post about it, but I'm in Cannes this week. Let me know if you're about. And that's about it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Really enjoyed this one. As you know, we're doing some special recordings whilst we're out in Cannes 2025, Cannes Lion 2025, I should say, not to be confused with the film festival where Laura has been many times. We'll see you again next time for our next episode. I've been Sammy, your host with the most, and we'll be back with some more Cannes guests. Ciao for now.